Caroline. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you
Oh,
for
it's a
asking
great
me.
pleasure. And what a story you've got, hey?
I think I still have to pinch myself sometimes and remind myself where I was and where I am, because I think sometimes people see you where you are now,
Sure.
and they don't necessarily see you when you were lying on the bathroom floor trying not to have a panic attack so your kids didn't see you and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's the case. And you have built a multi-million-pound business, but it didn't start from scratch. It started from when you were rock bottom.
Yeah. If you'd have said to me, even 10 years ago, I'd be sat here now sharing and having the business, I probably wouldn't have believed you, to be fair. I was always brought up where entrepreneurship and owning a business, that was out of the question. It was always about get your degree, work hard,
Right.
all of those things. And that was, again, as the people pleaser I was, that was what I did. And I was actually a podiatrist. That's actually where I
Oh,
started
really?
out, as a foot
There's a great
doctor.
shortage for
Yeah,
those, you
I
know.
know. When I think of the knowledge I now have with like social media and stuff, I think I'd have the best
Yeah.
podiatry clinic ever, and
I've got a
I'd have them
client
all
who's
over
a
the country
podiatrist.
and stuff. But again, what I experienced and what I went through, I really felt like the system let me down, going through a marriage that I didn't know was abusive, because again, it wasn't physical. It was emotional abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse. And I didn't even know when the relationship broke down. Even then, I still didn't realize I'd been in an abusive relationship.
And it creeps up on you, doesn't it?
It
It's just
really
one thing
does.
after the
And we're not
next.
taught really about sort of controlling relationships, or relationships if there are no physical bruises or anything, what that actually looks like. So I didn't know. And I was just a complete shell of myself, grey baggy tracksuits, drinking too much, eating too much, trying to numb out all of the feelings, but really focusing on being a mum. That for me was everything, because that's where I got my sense of worth, from just being a mum. And I had the traditional things like counselling, psychotherapy, but I just wasn't shifting forward.
Was this before you left, or
No,
before you left? Yeah.
it was after. So I'd had probably about 18 months that a lot had happened. My mum passed away very, very suddenly, and she was like my best friend. And I'd always had a rocky relationship with my father. And I've got two older sisters who live quite a distance away. So there I was looking after my dad, who I'd got this rocky relationship with. I'd got two children. My husband at the time, I didn't even know it was an abusive, controlling, financially abusive relationship. And then he actually left me. And again, I'd been brought up on, damn those Disney fairy tales of happy ever after, stay together for the kids and stay together for this. And but actually he did me the biggest favour ever.
Did you realise that you were so unhappy before he left?
I was numbed out. I was totally dissociated in life. And again, this is a lot of the stuff I teach and work with people around, what's called functional freeze. So I looked like everything was great from the outside. I'd have a smile on my face, the obligatory I'm fine when I walked outside the front door, but I was totally numb. I was disconnected from life, and my sense of worth was very much externalized. It was transactional. I didn't know just for being me was good enough. It had to be I did something, looked a certain way, did something. And for me at that time, it was simply being a mum. So I threw everything into being the best mum possible that I could, and which sounds a great thing to do, but actually that was a disservice to my children, because that's a lot of pressure on your kids to give you a sense of worth as well. And, I'd been diagnosed with anxiety, depression. I was self-harming, daily panic attacks, desperately trying not to have those, and a huge amount of debt, which I didn't even know. I kind of thought we were in maybe £8,000 worth of debt, like most families were. But what unravelled afterwards was we were in over £70,000 worth of debt, and I didn't even realise, because I thought we've got nothing to show for it. I mean, we had a nice house, a nice sort of 4-bed detached house, but other than that, we didn't go on flash holidays particularly or anything. But everything was about how it looked externally, and that also for me kept the facade of everything's okay, because again, coming from the family that I did, it was very much about how you were seen, what you were doing. But inside, I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel like I mattered. I just felt totally worthless. And I remember thinking, I just need to get my kids to 18, and then God knows what I'll do then. But my priority is get them to 18.
Yeah, it's such a problem for us, isn't it? About the fact that we're all conditioned to look at, to place more importance on what other people think about us.
Especially women.
Especially women, yeah. But I also think, because I've got some male clients, and I also think that the same is for them, that they end up just in these roles where they're just performing because they've got this responsibility now and this expectation that they will provide. And I think the same is for us women. But when you were at your lowest point then, what was it that actually triggered something in you to say, I can't stay here, I've got to do something?
I get goosebumps. It was in 2013, and it was over the space of about 3 months. So in April 2013, I had my house repossessed. And I remember I lived on this really nice housing estate in Northamptonshire in a nice 4-bed detached house. And I remember I had to hand the keys back because the money coming in did not equal the money going out. And I'd buried my head, you know, any letters that came through the door, unless they had a bit of red on or it was council tax because I didn't want to go to prison. I would kind of kick the can down the alley.
Order.
You know, I tell you, my card was cloned so many times to like the gas company and everything else because they say, oh, we'll just rearrange your next monthly payment. And it was a little bit more, but it gave me a month's grace. So I became an expert at that, of kicking the can down the alley and stuff. But in April 2013, I had my house repossessed, and I didn't tell anybody other than my friend, my best friend at the time, and my dad knew and my sisters knew. But I mean, everyone would have known because I moved from this 4-bed into this, eventually this 3-bed terraced house. So they must have known something was going
They'd
on.
have known you'd have moved and probably talked about it afterwards, but you wouldn't have been associated with them then, presumably, so it didn't really matter.
But I remember feeling so much shame, you know, because in the June that year I hit 40. So there I was, a 40-year-old single mother, kids from a broken home, and I felt a lot of shame. I felt like I'd let everybody down. And I remember when I hit 40 in the June of that year, I remember sitting in a place of thinking, it was almost like I was at a crossroads. I could either sit in this place of this is my life now, and you know, and I can sit here and blame everybody else for my life, take no ownership or responsibility because it is everybody else's fault that I was in that position, and be really, really angry at everybody else. Or I could take some responsibility and ownership and think, okay, if I want to change my life, it has to be up to me to do that. And that felt really difficult for me because I'd never been taught that. I had never been taught that actually my life was in my hands to grow, because I'd learned that my worth was external. The validation piece needed to come from somebody else. And I remember sitting there, and again, it was like this flash of fear and then empowerment, of the fear of thinking, oh my God, I'm on this planet on my own. It really is up to me. And I remember thinking, oh my God, and feeling like a sense of loneliness, a sense of pressure, a sense of, could I do this? And then it kind of shifted in, actually, if it is up to me, only I can change that. And it suddenly went into a space of, if I want my life to be different, I need to stop waiting for a knight in shining armor to come, who didn't come, not that time anyway. And a lot of idiots in tin foils, but definitely not a knight in shining armor. And I so wasn't
ready. Only good for the oven.
Yeah, exactly. And I realised it had to be me. But it was so alien because every cell of my body was saying I wanted somebody to rescue me. I've been conditioned for that.
It's so interesting, you know, because a lot of people have said to me, oh, you're so lucky. And, you know, we always joke about this, don't we? It's like, yeah, the harder I work, the luckier I get. But I always say, like, the one thing that I feel really lucky about is the fact that I did have a sense of personal responsibility. So, like, even at 12, and it's,
I didn't.
and I do think, like, we do always look externally to try and find a solution to our problems or our next level. We're waiting for somebody to give us permission and so on. So, Caroline, you talk about, like, women feeling unsafe in success. What do you think that means? So in terms of, like, the women here in this room today, how can they recognise when they've got those feelings, and how can they overcome them?
I think, again, it goes back to a system that we have globally around mental health and how we heal is very much based on what we call a top-down approach. It's very cognitive. It's about talking about things, but we don't think anxiety, we don't think depression, we feel it. And again, having a science background, I realized that there was this whole piece of mental health and trauma healing that I didn't even know about. Nobody had taught me about any of these things. And when I then realized the system that I was involved with wasn't helping me move forward. In fact, I was feeling more angry, if anything, thinking there's something wrong with me. And I realized there was this whole nervous system piece to this. It really comes down to our sensations in our body. So think of it like a pan of boiling water on a stove. It's recognizing, when does that first bubble start to appear? What can we do at that point? Where we live in a society where what we wait for is often when we're putting the lid on the boiling pan, and then we work with the symptoms. And I realized I didn't want to just work with symptoms. I wanted to know, why was I feeling anxious? Why was I feeling depressed? Why was I having panic attacks and self-harming? Not just navigating the symptoms of that. And I think what I realized then when I was starting to build my businesses was I didn't just need the strategy. I needed to feel safe enough in my body to step into success. And that meant I needed to feel safe to be visible. I needed to feel safe in my body. I knew I was safe. This is the difference. We know these things. We kind of all know we're good enough. But do you actually feel it? Because actually we are driven by our nervous system. We feel first, and then we add our thoughts to our past lived experiences and stories that keep us safe. So wherever any of us are is based on our own body keeping us safe, because we're built as human beings. Primary role, survival, to move away from pain. So when we think about women in business, and if you don't feel safe to succeed, or even, you don't want to fail, it will have an effect with what different parts of us might show up for us, with a good reason, because again, it's still trying to keep us safe. And I think, a lot of the women in particular that I've worked with are stuck in survival responses. And probably the key survival response they're stuck in is functional freeze. And functional freeze is almost like an intersection between a fight-flight response, where we're mobilizing a lot of energy and cortisol in our body, and then we're also in freeze. We do, secrete cortisol there, and we're stuck where we can look okay on the outside, but inside we're kind of on edge. There's I could be sat here, and this is me really, really grounded. If I was in freeze, I would be sat here like this. And if I was in fight flight, I'd be sat here like this. There are subtle somatic cues and nuances to how we look with how we show up. And the amount of women that I have worked with, because of over the years, they are addicted to cortisol. They are addicted to stress. The amount of people that I've seen get to where they want to in a business sometimes, and then maybe shift because they need to flood their body with cortisol then. And then when things start to become calm again, calm can equals danger for people. And I think it's flipping it.
That's when they create these traumas themselves.
Yeah, we absolutely create that, because although we all crave peace and calmness, if our nervous system thinks when we're peaceful and calm, it means we're not ready, we're not vigilant for the next person to say something mean to us or the next bad thing to happen to us, then we will create that in our body. So something happens because our nervous system's like, well, hold on a second. We need the cortisol because we need to be ready for the just in case based on your lived and past experiences.
And I guess creating those traumas also gives us reason why we're not stepping up, taking the next move. It's key, we think, because I think this quite often, that we think as entrepreneurs, we're really busy, we're doing everything we should, and the reason I'm not doing that, I don't have time to do that. But actually we're choosing to keep us in doing definitely. These things, that are keeping us in the same place.
For a reason, because our nervous system is driven to keep us safe. And that's like, say if someone needs to go and, put a post on Facebook or do a video, a lot of the stuff I talk about is you need to stretch your nervous system, not stress it. The moment we start to shift into a stress, we're going too quick, too fast, too soon. Even though we know we want to get there, if we're focused on the end goal and our nervous system thinks that could bring danger, you'll shut down and you do nothing. Okay, so if we bring it back to these micro steps, stretching the nervous system, and that might mean, you know, let's say the end goal is to do a reel on Facebook, for instance, okay, and the thought of that, you shut down, you do nothing.
Yeah, I'm
so
there.
yeah, but then we go back to the micro step. What feels safe in the nervous system to the stretch of that? Well, okay, I'm just going to write my script for it. I'm just going to prep for that. Does that feel okay? Okay, that's just a little bubble of water in my pan on the cooker kind of thing. Okay, I can do that. Then we do the next step. That might be I'm just going to sit in front of a camera. How does that feel? So what we start to look at is, rather than pushing beyond, because we end up doing nothing then, you know, and this is why even things like anxiety,
do all the other things that we normally do, don't we?
Absolutely. And our system shuts down. We focus on, you know, if I said, right, we're climbing to Mount Everest, it's like, and we don't go anywhere. If I said, do you know what, let's do 10 meters. It's like, oh, okay, I can do that then. So we have to train our nervous system to stretch, to feel safe enough so that everything can process in the body to think, well, okay, look around, yeah, that feels safe enough. And then bizarrely, if you do that, you end up getting to the end result in the process. But a lot of people, when they're building their business, they know where they want to go, and there's nothing wrong with knowing that. But then in the actual doing, if we're focusing on that, we end up doing probably not a lot, because that feels dangerous. That feels like someone might say something mean to us. Someone might try and, you know, pull you down or something. So we end up not doing anything, even though we know we want to get there. The body is no, because this is safe where you are right now, because it's familiar.
Yeah, no, I think you do have to have the vision, but I do think you have to reverse engineer, right? To
absolutely
then say, right, well, how do I get to there from here?
Yeah.
So Caroline, you started this business at 45 and you scaled it to millions. And you're also very well known for saying it's never too late. I think when you sent me information, that was in capitals and bold. It's never too late.
Because it really, really isn't.
And it is so interesting, isn't it? Because I'm probably one of the oldest people in this room, and you know, I hear people young like Hayley. You know,
young whippersnappers,
you know, worrying about like, oh, I haven't made my million, and you know, I'm past 30.
Yeah.
So
you old fogey.
so what do you want all of us in this room to know, whatever age we're at, about the possibility of creating that?
I think it goes back probably to what Helen was saying a little bit earlier about what do you want out of your life as well? Because I think, again, sometimes we get wrapped up in what we think other people think we should have or want as well.
Absolutely.
And that's in income goals as well, the 10K months and everything else. But actually,
we're
you know
surrounded
what?
by it on social media, aren't we? Which drives me bonkers.
But actually, you know what? If you want to earn 2K a month, that is absolutely fine.
Yes,
Be proud of all of that. You know, I think often, you know, if you look at my social media even, it's very rare I actually talk about money and what I earn or anything else, because you know what? It's kind of irrelevant to anybody else.
None of my clients talk about how much money they earn.
No. In fact, sometimes in my Q&As in my community, if they're talking about the online space and stuff, or, you know, if someone puts a negative post or they read something, I kind of go, what do you think Brené Brown would do? Would she get in an argument? Would she have to then do another veiled post about somebody else just in case and keep this going? Would she do that? Would she post what she's earning or anything else? No. But do we think she's amazing? Do we think she's really good in her vision, mission, purpose and that? Yes. So it's what's important to you at the end of the day. And I think you've got to kind of keep coming back and anchoring into that. Life is precious, life is short. What do you want out of it? And I have a post-it note literally that I wrote years ago, and I think Joe mentioned it as well, stop waiting. Because I was always I'll book that holiday when, I will do that then. I do not do that now. If I want to do something and I'm able to do that, I will absolutely do it.
Yeah, no, I remember reading this book years ago, and it was called Life's Too Short, Wear Your Party Pants.
Oh, I like that.
And it was all about the fact that this woman's mom had bought her this pair of lovely pants, you know, that weren't just plain and all.
That's
she
good
said
for
you've
a
got to
goodie
wear
bag.
them. You can only wear them for parties. The next party it came to, they were too small for her. So it's like, girls, wear your party pants. Don't save things for best.
And life is very precious. You know, my mum passed away at 67, so she hasn't really seen any of my children grow up. up or all of the things, and you just think you just don't know what tomorrow is going to hold. And if you're saying I will do this, what are you actually waiting for? Usually it's permission, but at the end of the day, permission from whom? You know, when we start to say these things, I'm going to post that, but I'm scared what they are going to say. I always go, who are they? Who are they? Who are these people?
But also, right, when we're kind of like thinking about what other people are saying, we're kind of like exchanging our happiness. So going back to what you're saying about income, right? I absolutely believe that. Set the vision for your life first. What do you want your life to look like? Is that a 2K a month lifestyle, or is it a 100K a month lifestyle? It's what you decide. And then are you prepared to do what it takes to actually get that? It's got to start with what you want for life first, doesn't it?
And realistically, I think as well, again, we live in a world where it's like, I want to work an hour a week and earn £10,000 a month. And if I haven't, well, that's everybody, all the courses I've bought, that's all their fault then. You know, I'm going to blame everybody else. And again, that's a trauma response. If we're blaming other people all of the time, that is a trauma response. And I think one of the things I've learned so much about myself is, you know, regardless of what happens in my life, I always look at not the other person ever. I always look at, why do I feel like this about this situation? Because that's the only power I have to change. I can't change anybody else. The only power I have is in how I feel about this situation. And if I feel about this situation a certain way, that's my trauma, that's my wounding. I need to work on that, not get someone else to change their behavior so I go back to feeling better, because ultimately the core wound of all of that is still there anyway.
Because I always say to my mum, right, she gets angry over like the stupidest things, it's untrue, and I say, Mum, you're giving away your power. They don't care how you feel. You might be shouting at them through a window, but they don't care. You know, like, don't give away your power. And it goes back to, you know, saying about how you want to live your life, that when we stop ourselves from taking the right action because we're scared of what other people are saying, are we all prepared? Seriously, are we prepared to give away our future happiness and our future dreams because of what somebody else might think on social media? Like, seriously.
And
but we do that.
We do. And I think it's really thinking, who are they? I realized when I first started my business and I started to do reels, for instance, I realized that I was posting reels so my peers, my academic peers, could think how clever I was. I knew my stuff. And my dad, that was a big thing for me as well at the time, that my dad could say, wow, you're so clever, Caroline, and stuff, and that you could see my knowledge.
Because you just want that, that approval.
But I realised that I was posting for the wrong people. I wasn't posting for the people that actually needed the work and, you know, doing fun stuff or different edutainment or different types of things that you can have on reels. I realised I was purely focused on, because again, a lot of my own core beliefs were I wasn't good enough. And I think growing up, you know, blonde hair, blue eyes, how I looked, you know, that became almost part of the story. And I became this high achieving, people pleasing perfectionist then, because I needed to prove my worth separate to how I looked or separate to anything that I did, which stood me in good stead for a lot of things, because obviously I'd want to be the best at whatever I did then to get a sense of approval from my father in particular in all of that. And to this day, you know, my dad's 84 now, I'm 52, and my dad still has never said, I'm really proud of you, Caroline, well done. And he kind of gets what I do now. I mean, I'm remarried now, and probably only up until maybe 2 years ago, he'd always say to my husband, are you all right with her doing this stuff? Are you all right with that?
as though he needs to
I know my husband was like, well, yeah, she earns about 50 times more than me in a month, so yes. But he would never take what I would do seriously. I remember doing a one-to-one client one time, and I'd got my computer and it was at home, and I was in my study at home, and my dad had just been round and had a cup of tea with my husband, and as he walked out, I thought, please walk past, please go to the car, you know I'm busy, and I'm one-to-one client. And he starts tapping on the window and I'm kind of going like this, and he goes, can Julie come for Christmas dinner, like this? And I thought, you know what, if I was a man in that situation, you know, he would never have done those things. So I've had to work a lot on glass ceilings for me, and stepping into what I could achieve, what I could do, you know, the stories I grew up with about money, all of that. And, you know, one of the things, I mean, I call it sort of grounded leadership or embodied entrepreneurship. It's about, you can have all of that strategy, but you've got to keep working on your nervous system has to build capacity to be able to cope, to go into all of that as well. Because it doesn't matter what strategy you're doing, because if it doesn't feel safe, you'll never do it. You've got to keep doing that work.
So Caroline, I want you to just give one thing to the audience here about one simple thing that they can do tomorrow to help them stretch out of where they are now into that next level. What is the one thing that you will?
Start to track sensations in your body. So the moment you start to feel a slight raise of your heart rate, anything like that, pause. Don't push through it, pause and get curious, because there's something about, if you kept going at that pace, it will stop you doing it. Pause at that point, reassess, stretch what you're doing, but make sure you're not stressing where you end up doing nothing. So go much slower, or think of the boiling pan of water. Okay, I'm feeling the first bubble, pause. Right, now let me reflect and reassess. Let me ground again, back in the present moment, land where your feet are. Now take the next step. And keep tracking your sensations all of the time. That stood me in a lot of good stead.
Caroline, thank you so much for sharing everything. It's been absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
Truly appreciate you. So everybody, please thank Caroline. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Carol. Thanks so much.